I'm Swapna. I help retirement planning simple. I work at RBC. I'm a senior product manager at RBC, and I've worked at corporates before. I've worked at startups before this, so it's been a long, or at least for me, it's been a long product journey. And started my career as a software engineer, moved on to the business side, marketing side, and then it's been product management through and through. So I live, eat, breathe product for a living, and I love my job right now. Yeah, so it's, I guess that's it. Yeah.
Cool. Karen, do you want to?
All right. Hi, I'm Karen Stephen. I work at CBC, and I've worked in our digital products department for the last 12 years or so in various different roles. And currently I'm the audience insights manager. So I work connecting our product teams with our actual audiences. I encourage them to read the feedback, use the feedback, encourage them to incorporate it into their product development life cycles. And then I also am heading up UX Research Ops. It's something that we're trying to get a little bit better at, so it's still relatively new, but the two things kind of really go well together.
Great. Martin, do you want to?
And I'm Martin. I'm currently one of the product managers at Coinsquare. There I lead our efforts around treasury and fund transfer and payments and all that kind of fun money-related stuff. My love for feedback and user engagement, I mean, it's been years of work from product design and experience design and event management, and now in the fintech space. And fortunately, having had the fortune as well of helping some of the companies in Toronto, some really good, interesting software companies in Toronto, kind of think about how they approach the user and how they discover what matters to their customers and how their software fits into their customers' lives. So really happy to be here for this.
Cool. So Martin, we were chatting before the panel. I told you I was going to start with this. And you mentioned that you were looking forward to talking about the hell of feedback. Do you want to give some color to that? Like why that phrase? Why do you think, I know you're being facetious or joking, but why do you think that's something that we find funny?
Well, half joking. So, okay, quick show of hands in the room. How many of you have had or deal with that big bucket of ideas and feature requests? It could be a set of spreadsheets that go back a few years. It could be an unmanageable list of stuff. Maybe people have thrown some vague, unrealistic estimates or assessments. Maybe the executive team have cruised by. Maybe you've been on a sales call or the sales team have come in and they've dropped the latest RFP off and every single checkbox has to be retained. Show of hands. How many of you people have had that bucket of doom? Okay, so it looks like about 60%, 70% of you have had that experience. So there are better ways. You don't have to deal with that bucket, but yeah, I mean, that's the hell of feedback, right? And it's the tragic thing about dealing with that bucket of gloop is that it drains our empathy. It drains our ability to really care about what's behind those asks and about those inquiries, and it leaves us accountable for managing and dealing with and reporting on stuff that is actually not going to help. So I'm sure this discussion, I know that certainly in the conversation we've had before we came up, there's some really cool work about how do we get interesting and meaningful information, and how do we take those ideas, those wonderful ideas that could lead to great insights and turn into real value for the products and the customers that we serve.
Cool. So I kind of want to get a lay of the land at the high level. Can you, maybe Swapna, starting with you, just tell us, how do you manage feedback currently at your organization? Like, how does it get collected from your customers, and what are some of your processes like?
So with our environment in the bank, we have business lines. We have multiple business lines. There might be multiple product teams in each of those business lines. So I'm going to talk about my business line and my product team because it's a huge organization, and we can come back to the topic around how do we collate feedback from multiple sources and from multiple product teams into one source of truth. But in my team, that is composed of engineers, designers, and customer support, and the tech teams, etc., we receive feedback from our structured sources. So for example, we conduct customer interviews, focus groups, surveys, etc. So we keep on getting feedback through those sources. But we also get a lot of feedback from the frontline support. For example, our advisors or financial planners who are interacting with customers on a daily basis. So those are our real users because they interact with customers day in and day out. We receive feedback, continuous feedback from them because they want to see these processes improved. They want better solutions to the problems that they are facing today. So we have multiple user groups, or I should say types of users. One are, the first one are the real clients like you or me who interact with the bank on a regular basis, and the second group is the frontline support who interact with the clients day in and day out. And that user group becomes our proxy in a way to gather customer feedback. So yeah, we receive a stream of continuous feedback on a regular basis, as well as the structured feedback that we hope to receive through user interviews and surveys, etc. So that is the level of feedback we have. And also we have analytics in place. So depending on if the product is up and running, the kinds of metrics or the data that we want to track is tracked, and then we, as we iterate the product, we keep on collating a lot of data, and then hopefully it relates back to the success metrics that we have defined initially. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Karen, do you want to? And maybe some color around once it all gets ingested, like high level, where do you go from there?
So we have a slightly different model because we tend to all be, all our digital feedback is coming in. We have a couple different channels with social and our feedback collection system, but we tend to keep our UX research, so the actual talking to the users is a little bit separate. So when we are collecting that, right now, everything that people are sending us, our users are sending us, instead of what we're reaching out for, it kind of goes in, it's all in one system, and then how we're collecting it tends to help direct it to the appropriate product teams. So right now, we've got multiple forms, we've got different ways for people to indicate which particular digital product they're using, if it was our app versus the website, we're able to differentiate that. And then once it's in those systems, we've got our UX researchers who tend to go through that and identify what they think is valuable and use that as they're developing new features. If it is a bug, we want to make sure that we're aware of this almost as soon as possible. So we've connected everything to our Slack channels that our dev teams and stuff are able to monitor real time. So we tend to try and be as responsive depending on what type of feedback we're getting.
It's interesting. Coinsquare's had a number of different practices around customer feedback and customer engagement. Everything from panels and surveys and outreach and interviews, which are really great for focused we need to dig into this particular area. We do a ton of surveying of social media. Reddit is hugely active for our customer base, and so if something twitches, there's a Reddit thread or 3 about it in our industry, and half the time I could learn about things from Reddit faster than our instrumentation would tell us. There is a passionate core of customers, and understandably so. I mean, we work in an industry where the amount of information that can be shared is somewhat limited, and the amount of trust that customers are asked to place in us is massively high. And so those public venues are where we do need to go out and meet our customers and listen and learn from them. We've been going through a terrific transformation over the past year at Coinsquare in our product practice and how we as an organization engage with our products and work around products. And a big piece of that is really opening communication channels across the organization. There's a ton of informal learnings that come from client success, that come from just keeping an eye on the tickets and the type of tickets that come, the trends, the ebbs and flows in those, more so almost than in the actual statements themselves, that you'll only capture and only learn from if you are having regular conversations across the organization. So the more that we've been able to do that and build on that, the closer we are to really the pulse of what's going on in the product, and the faster we can respond to it.
Given that there's so many different ways that you all are ingesting this feedback, can you maybe give us a little bit more detail on then how do you organize it all? Because if you're getting stuff from Reddit, Client Success, all these other places, how do you surface like what's important and the trends and that kind of stuff?
Different tools at different times for different purposes.
Okay.
So we've got regular flows of reporting in from our client success team. We've got oodles of Slack channels where kind of tactical responses can be seen. I find that the individual contribution matters less sometimes than what you mine from it. It's the how the thing is said more so than the words themselves that get you past what the person's asking for, what the customer is asking for, reporting and more to the problem that they're solving, or they're offering solutions to the problems they have.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, so not from Coinsquare directly, from my previous job, we had a customer who requested a specific checkbox on a send push notification form. Well, actually, she requested a checkbox and that we remove a confirmation modal. She said, just remove the confirmation modal. This thing's away. This thing really annoys us, right? Well, the confirmation modal serves preventing you from accidentally messaging every single attendee of your 5,000 person event saying lunch is at. And no one wants to send a notification saying lunch is at to 5,000 people. So that modal is pretty important. But what we discovered was that she was sending individual notifications to each attendee 4, 5, 6 times a day with individual updates for their personal itinerary, their personal pieces, and sometimes it was groups. And the way that the system handled push notifications at the time was if you had a group of people, you had to message them individually. So we were making her spend about 3 hours extra every day to send out these push notifications just by having the modal, or that was the solution she offered. We were making her spend 3 hours a day to send push notifications because we didn't have the ability to send notifications to a group. So do I prioritize, right, how do I respond to that? How do I filter that? Mm-hmm. On the face of it, she wants the modal gone. Well, that's one customer and it's a protective device. Bin it. Easy. But okay, look at the value that we can unlock for someone by solving the real problem and just that little bit of extra probing. And that's where the real work for me comes in, I think. Mm-hmm. That's where, inevitably where we can do the real stuff. Sometimes systems can help us track that, but the risk of many idea management systems is that it turns into that bucket of slop of stuff that, here's the words they used.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Karen, what about you? How do you go about digesting all of that stuff?
Kind of a similar idea. So we tend to, there's 2 different ways that we're using our feedback right now. So we kind of do the prioritizing any bugs, anything that's live in prod right now, kind of go through, address those first, get rid of the burning fires. But then when it's for feature requests, we do tend to look at what is the problem. And we'll often do that through our OKRs. And so we might not be addressing the feedback as it's coming in, but we will mine it. So as we've got our roadmaps or our OKRs or any other way where we know we're going to be doing some kind of feature work, we will then often go and look at the feedback that we've received, see what people have said, try and understand what the actual problem is, is, and then we'll try and validate it. So we like to, make sure that we go back and, do some user research. We'll confirm with the analytics, is this actually a problem? Is that feature not getting used? Is there something else that we can do? Is this really a problem that needs to be fixed for everyone, or is it, a 3 people who wrote in kind of problem? And so that's really what we're doing right now. So we've got those kind of 2 approaches where we'll mine the feedback and we'll use it immediately. So it depends on where people are in their life cycles, right? Like, or their product development cycles. So if they're looking for features that they want to work on, if they're at that part, they sometimes will look at what people are saying and try and react accordingly. And otherwise, they'll decide what they want to focus on and then go and see what people are saying so that they can make sure that they're building what people are wanting.
Swapna, what about you? How do you guys kind of organize it all?
So we have 2 streams going on in our product practice. We have the product innovation stream and the product maintenance/enhancements stream, right? So any kind of feedback that comes in is divided into 3 groups. The first one is bugs and technical fixes, defect fixes, etc. The second group is enhancements, and the third group is big rock features and big ideas or blue sky thinking ideas. So depending on the kind of feedback that we receive, the feedback is then routed towards the appropriate team that then prioritizes the feedback according to a set criteria that we have defined. So for example, if it's a matter of bug fixes and technical fixes or technical debt enhancements, etc., we go through a prioritization matrix that takes into account the number of customers that this issue has affected, the frequency of the usage of this particular feature, does it align with what we are trying to, what customer value does it provide, does it align with the business objectives or no, as well as the risks and the technical effort that is required. So then once the list is prioritized, the product maintenance teams can take it, as the backlog. So we have a backlog. They take it as and when required, as the sprint progresses. For the product innovation stream, it's a bit complicated because at an organizational level or at a business line level, we have, as Karen mentioned, we have OKRs or objectives or goals defined for the next fiscal year. The prioritization of those goals or those OKRs takes place maybe in a matter of a few months, or it might even take about 6 months or so. So we put in a lot of effort to understand what should go in the next fiscal year. What are those 5 or 6 big roadmap items that we are planning, right, for the next year? Then as the feedback comes in, we collate it into different themes, and those themes then relate back to the OKRs that we have defined for the year. If they don't align with our goals and objectives, then they get into the backlog. We still park those items because they are feedback for us. So that is the funnel process of how we get the feedback and then put it into the right bucket for us to then prioritize further. And also there are 2 kinds of feedback, right? One feedback is just the general feedback that we get on a daily basis, on a weekly, monthly basis. Another kind of feedback is more targeted, as we were talking about. It's more about when we want to focus on a particular initiative, when we want to focus on a particular problem that we've identified in the market, then we start soliciting feedback from our customers, and that feedback is then tied back with what we are trying to solve for. And that's how we sort of funnel the feedback process into how we deal with the feedback and how it relates back to the product items, the product enhancements or features that we have.
Okay. You guys have kind of mentioned the idea that people are giving passionate feedback. What are some of the techniques, or maybe just what's your approach to dealing with the passion, and then how maybe impactful that feedback actually is? I don't know, whoever wants to jump in.
There's the deeply passionate about the domain, the subject matter. This is the philosophy of the space that you are operating in. Comply type feedback, and that's a challenging one because, for us that's challenging because we're shifting, we're moving actively to shift how cryptocurrency works and the cryptocurrency exchange business works. We don't believe that the way that it's been operated with fly-by-night risky operators is the way that's fair to treat customers. So we've been actively speaking in favor of regulation, in favor of protection, and sometimes that gets us in conflict with very passionate customers. The other case, sort of outside of the exchange, is kind of in dealing in B2B sales and the sales team coming and bringing the feature request that one customer is bringing, and that one feature request is going to close the deal, which, in my worst experience of feedback and feature requests, led to the dread game of put the dollar value on the feature request and rank them by dollar value, which was awesome when we connected our feedback to Salesforce and we discovered that a login change could be worth $4 billion. It was amazing because, every customer who'd ever had a deal, the maths didn't work, obviously, but, there's the kind of games that we can get stuck in. For me, one of the things I'd love to hear from both of you about is also how you choose which customers to listen to. And which customers do you say, nah, you don't matter today? Because there are going to be some customers that you have to say, no, you're not really the person we want to deal with. Both of you have different kind of organizations that have maybe different ways of dealing with that, but yeah, I don't know. I've been in the startup world, and that's perhaps more of a pressure, but.
We get a lot of that. People feel passionately about the CBC, and they have this deep connection that they might not have to other brands. So they write in, and they really feel strongly. But one of the things that we get are people who are writing in because they just can't use the technology. They just haven't kept up, and we can only support so many people on so many devices, and we do an awesome job. But if you're still running Netscape on the computer that you first got in 1995, maybe that's not going to work so well. So we tend to disregard that kind of stuff. But a lot of it, we try and look at what they're saying rather than how they're saying it. I mean, people feel quite passionately about CBC, about our content, about how they consume it, about who they're watching it with, about all kinds of things, and it's got this emotional connection for them. And I found that you really have to learn how to kind of separate what they're saying from how they're saying it, and then go beyond that and have some empathy, and to try and really understand what their problem is and how they're experiencing it, because it is something that a lot of the developers hadn't done yet. So one of the new practices that we've put in place is when we have new product managers, new product owners who are joining, we actually put them with our audience feedback team for a couple of hours. I mean, I'd love for it to be longer, for them to really understand what kind of stuff are people writing in about, what do they think about our products. It's a really great way to kind of get people to fully understand how people perceive their products, instead of just the people who are building it. They have a different perspective, and this helps open some of their eyes.
Mm-hmm. Swapna, what about you? I mean, you were talking a lot about internal stakeholders and working with them. Is the passion issue an issue within the internal stakeholders too?
Yeah, I was about to mention that because we have stakeholders who have spent 20 plus years in the bank. They have been financial planners or have spent their entire careers in the financial industry, right? So they know the bank in and out, they know the customers in and out. In fact, some of them have been front-end support. They started their careers, as tellers or advisors. So they know how clients think. They know the pain points of the clients in and out. So they, in my case, or at least in my team, I think they are like our stakeholders, our internal stakeholders are the most passionate people who have experienced. They have a solution in mind, they have a vision in mind, and they are not afraid to share it with us. We have a product team, and then we work with the stakeholders, right? So they are fearless in terms of how they describe their vision getting productized in the digital, on the digital platform. We have tried to change the mindset of our stakeholders from a pure banking professional, a business professional sense into more of a customer mindset. So for example, we ran a 5-day design sprint recently on a huge initiative that we are undertaking. And these stakeholders had solutions in mind. They had their own versions of the solutions that they want to incorporate to solve that problem. We had to make them understand that we first start with the customer's job to be done. Then we understand the gaps or the pain points that we have as of today that can be filled in to enable those jobs to be done or to solve those jobs. And then we move on to defining the personas, the user profiles, the different use cases, and then we drill down deeper into the success metrics, etc. So we had to sort of educate them on how digital product management, or at least agile digital product management, works. So that has helped us a lot because they feel involved in the entire product management process because we ask them to prototype. We ask them to create sketches in the design sprint, for example. So they feel as if they are a part of building the product, and that's how, in my experience, they have started to change their mindset to think, to change from a solution-based mindset into more of a customer pain point kind of a experience.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment about coaching your own internal stakeholders. But also both of you had examples of the feedback was essentially a suggested solution or / design solution. Yeah. To what degree do you find, like, I guess, Martin, you already talked about this, but like feedback that is just a solution-based, how do you manage that? Or like, what are some of the approaches to separating solution from problem?
I mean, from us, we sometimes listen to what they're saying, but oftentimes their solutions are like, be more like Netflix. It's like, well, that's great, but that's not really a solution. So often we try and figure out, like, as I said, like, what is the problem? And so we haven't gone so far as to do like co-creation workshops or anything, but we do tend to try and get out there and talk to the actual users and make sure that it is an actual problem that goes beyond just the people who reported it. Because our user base is so huge and our mandate is massive, we really do try and make sure that we're not just solving something that's going to be a very niche thing. That being said, if what someone writes in is pretty obvious and it's not going to take a lot of effort to implement, then why not?
Right. I wanted to start talking about taking the feedback and prioritizing that feedback into something that might actually make it into your product. But I think first I'd be curious to hear if any of you have an example of a particularly bad kind of prioritization mistake you made when it came to digesting feedback and just implementing something that, or prioritizing in a way that you now consider a mistake. Do any of you have an example?
A slightly sideways tack from prioritization mistake, more management mistake. Adopting a feedback management system and from transitioning from a previous vendor. Migrating 4,500 feature requests and then the directive to reprocess every single one and categorize it so that all that precious data from 5 years ago wouldn't be lost. If it's more than 3 months old, flush it down the toilet, please. For the love of all that's holy, the world has changed from 3 months ago. Like, really? Is it fresh? Is it relevant? Are these customers who are active? Is it a segment that's growing? Is it a segment that is moving away from you because they've outgrown your solution or you have outgrown their problem space? There's a number of different ways of slicing it, but looking at sales trends to help you bucket the customer segments that you care about, particularly if you're in startup mode. right? You are past your initial customers. You're past your first 100 customers, and you've now gone a broader, more mainstream audience base. They have different needs from the first 100 people, and you may no longer be able to suitably serve the needs of those first 100 people. Or they have been so terrifically successful with your business that they have more complex needs or richer needs than the next 5,000 customers, and if you stay focused on those first 100, you will never grow. So you have to be careful about the customers that you really pay attention to. Be deliberate. Where are you in your product's life cycle? Where are your customers in their adoption and their life cycle of their needs? And match the two, lest you just stay in maintenance and complexity mode.
Yeah, ditto. Yeah, we didn't have that problem because we didn't have a system to migrate from, so luckily I didn't have to do that. All we had was a shared Gmail inbox for all the feedback for everything that CBC has ever done or ever touched or ever made, and 10 people who had to all go in and try and answer it. So good luck getting any of that over to the product teams. So we did implement a system, and that worked well. And I'm finding where we are with our agile transformation is we're becoming a little bit more mature, and we're starting to try and really be audience focused and customer first, and talk to our users and encourage them to reach out to us. But we're still at the point where not all products are the same. We've got some that are newer and some that are more mature. And same with the product teams that are managing those products. So I think we don't really have a one-size-fits-all answer. And because we're lucky, we have a mandate that allows us to not have to make a profit. We don't always have the same concerns, but we do have to try and have the opposite problem to serve all customers all the time. So sometimes I think making money and focusing on the people that you think you can make the most money off of is a little bit easier than trying to figure out how to be all things to all people.
So how do you manage that? Because that does sound very difficult.
So I think what we're trying to do right now is we developed personas for each product. We tried to look at the overlap between them and make sure between all the different products that we've got, I don't know, we've got like 17 or something like that, that at least one of the products is serving every single Canadian. And so that's kind of where we're at. I'm sure people have fallen through the cracks. It's easy to do. So we are continually evaluating how we're managing all the feedback that's coming in and the products, and evaluating kind of like how their performance is in relation to the audiences that they're meant to serve.
So do your personas evolve over time? I was assuming they do, right? So you have to continuously keep on iterating.
So they're evolving, and it's something that we're trying to encourage the product teams to do. So one of the systems that I'm trying to implement, as I said, I'm trying to get into some UX research ops, and one of those things is trying to coordinate some across team systems, and so we're trying to develop some systems that will allow us to have personas and have insights that are valid for each persona, so that we'd be able to evaluate whether this is true across products or is it just for this particular one, and have the insights that we know to be true, the ones that we think to be true, and still need to be validated. And so that's kind of how we're trying to deal with that particular problem.
Okay. Swapna, anything to add?
A prioritization mistake at a very high level, because our product, or the fintech product that I'm managing right now, is a 2.5-3 years old product, right? So when we started, it was in the acquisition phase. We wanted to get traction for the product. In that scenario, obviously the initial 1 year was about bug fixing and making sure that the core features of the product are working properly, the core capabilities are working properly. But as the product grew and we scaled, we started getting a lot of, traction from our stakeholders, internal stakeholders, in terms of like they wanted more features and more capabilities to be built from on our platform. And we started doing that. So year 2, we started creating amazing levels of value-added capabilities on the platform. But what we didn't pay attention was the performance as well as the tech debt that we were accumulating on the sites, right? So the performance suffered because we were like, okay, this product is working. It's getting to a level where we can grow and scale very quickly. Right now we have about 1.5 million customers on our platform. So the year 2 or the 2.5 mark was critical for us because we were prioritizing a lot of new features and new capabilities without stopping and thinking about how is it affecting the performance and the scalability of the platform that is our cash cow or our bread and butter in a way. So that was a prioritization mistake which provided us with a ton of sort of bad feedback or customer complaints in a way because the product wasn't functioning in the way that customers expected it to function. So that was one of the biggest prioritization mistakes we as a group made because we didn't realize that the product has now grown. And then we fixed it by creating these 2 streams of product management or product innovation and product maintenance. And we received funding for both, or we passionately asked for funding for both of them, just so that each of the squads or each of the streams can concentrate on the work that they are doing. The product maintenance squad should not worry about the new features that are planned on the roadmap and how can they fit those features into their existing capacity, because that is the job of the product innovation team. Let them figure it out and vice versa, right? So that was the fix we made. That was a pivot we made in the way we work as a product management team. But yeah, that was one of the prioritization mistakes we've done.
Okay. Go for it.
Related to the prioritization and selection of problems and feedback, you mentioned going out and speaking to users, and I feel like we're formalizing a lot of research discovery into the UX practice, and product managers maybe tend to be a little distant from it. Context. Holy moly, how many people in this room operate their product, lead their products, and have a baked-in hidden assumption because of how we work that that's the one thing our customer or user is interacting with at any given time. It's on a computer. It's the only thing on their screen because when you're looking at the product, it's the only thing. I'll bet most people, if you think about it hard, when you're looking at it and thinking about it, your product is the one window, and there's a baked-in assumption that your customers are on a computer, on the web browser. You had a fantastic story about context and finding a problem and choosing to selecting a problem to engage with based on discovering the context. I'd love to, if you want to share that.
Sure. So yeah, I was just saying, because I implemented this awesome feedback system, it comes with a kind of like FAQ kind of section, you know, self-help, self-serve, all that great stuff. But it has a search bar, and so I was just going through and I was looking at the search results this one time, and I was like, this is weird. So the top 30 results out of 50 were Canadian cities, and I was like, what does this have to do with CBC? Like, why are people searching for Muskoka? Like, I really don't get it. And so I was like, okay, well, you know, I really don't know, but I could try and find out. So one of the things I did is I ran a little experiment. I was like, okay, well, you know, they're looking for something local. They are searching for possibly local news. They might be looking for the weather. They might be looking for radio frequencies or what's on TV, you know, in their area. CBC's big. We do a lot of stuff. So I was trying to figure out what it was, and made little kind of like stub pages for them, and then looked at the results, you know, a month later to see what kind of stuff people chose. And they almost all chose the radio frequency page. And I was like, well, that's weird, right? Like, why are they going to my help center? Why aren't they searching on CBC? So I tried going to CBC to find the radio frequency page. Yeah. It was fun. So I tried our search, but our search, unfortunately, is a newer system, and it wasn't indexing this older system, which, of course, was where our radio frequency page was. So you couldn't find it by search. Like, it was just not there. It's like, okay, well, maybe people would have tried. Maybe we can find it, the old-fashioned way. We'll go manually through. So it's like, okay, start at cbc.ca, go to radio, go to schedules, and in there's a sub-nav that you can find frequency. Totally intuitive. So, yeah. So anyways, what we couldn't do that. We talked to other users. I was like, okay, like, is this really the problem that you guys are having? Yes, this is. So in December, we decided we would try and fix this problem. There was an innovation sprint that we ran, and so I proposed this particular thing. I was like, I'm going to get a team together. We're not going to actually make anything new. We're just going to make this thing that exists findable. And yeah, I know, simple, but we did. So we got it together. We got it so that it's now indexed by our search engine. We put it into a different, same iframe, different page, and now people can actually search for and find. Oh, and we also added it to the nav, so you don't have to go 7 deep to try and find it.
And where were they when they were looking for the frequencies?
Well, where do you mean?
So you said...
Oh, well, they were on my help center. Well, they were driving... Yeah, okay, so the context. So when we talk to the people... I get distracted. It's kind of late. So when we talk to the users, I was like, well, like, why are you looking for this? Like, why are you typing in Barrie? Why are you typing in Muskoka? I don't understand what this is. And they said, well, what it is we are going on a road trip, we're going on vacation, we're going to a city that we don't know where we are, and we want to know what channel do I put my car's radio station on so I can continue to listen to the CBC the whole way there. And so that was what they were trying to do. Basically, a lot of people interact with the digital product because they've already got some kind of existing experience with the non-digital, with the over-the-air radio or broadcast, and then they come to the digital world to kind of get added information for that experience. So it's kind of a weird thing.
And if you hadn't heard, we're driving, so we need to get the frequency that's for us where we are right now. I mean, you've got billboards everywhere. You've got everything saying in Toronto. When you live in Toronto, you go to this frequency. Everyone knows the frequency, but that context really does change things, doesn't it? Very cool.
On your note about UX, you guys all work at sort of different sizes of organization. I'm curious to know, when you're dealing with feedback and prioritization, how do you all work with design on that? How do you collaborate in that way? Go for it. Yeah. Swapna, take it away.
Yeah, I can start. So the structure of a bank is a little different than, I think, other companies. So in our organization, we have the user research / user design team that floats in from another business group altogether. We have a digital group, and we sort of lease these user researchers from that business group into our team, and they work with us. They are funded by us. The responsibility or ownership of user research, customer interviewing, market research, ethnographic research, etc., falls on that team, and that's been going on for the last, 10, 20 years. Since the banks in general are trying to digitally transform themselves, they are trying to be agile. The product management as a practice is new to the bank, right? So right now we are at a stage where we are trying to get involved with the user research team. So the product team is trying to get involved with the user research team so that both the teams can be involved in the customer feedback collection and usage process. So that's how it works in our business group right now. But do you want me to touch on something else?
No, that's good. Yeah. Unless you have more you want to say.
Yeah, so we're slightly different. We don't have a different group. for UX research. We do have a marketing research kind of department, and they're on their own floor. We're an old, well-established company. We're really used to market research. It's something that we've been doing for a long time. People seem to think, that they know what they're doing. UX research is something new. Qualitative was kind of a bad word in our department for the longest time. So if you don't have a number and a really large number to go along with it, then it doesn't really mean anything. So it's been a change that's been happening slowly over time. It's starting to become a bit more common for a team to actually have at least a UX designer or a product designer on their team. And some teams are lucky enough to have an actual UX researcher that's embedded with them. And so for the teams that don't, one of the things that I've started was basically, I'm calling it a research collective. So we've got a bunch of QA people or product people who are interested in actually talking to users and learning some of the skills and practices that go along with that particular role. And so we've kind of got that started. We're starting off small by trying to get them used to just talking to users, and it's a skill that has to be developed, and it scares a lot of developers. So we've just started doing kind of guerrilla testing in the atrium once a month, just at least having it set up where anyone who walks by, we can do some at least usability testing and just see if something works. Because that kind of stuff you don't need to have specific people.
So people kind of self-select to do that?
Yeah. We're the CBC, so we don't have any money to give anyone, so we have no swag, nothing. I did have some waterless tattoos the last time I did it. But people come over and you can actually gain a lot of insight. Just talking to people is it's eye-opening because you get to see your product through their eyes, and by talking to actual people, it's amazing when you're able to ask follow-up questions. I mean, surveys are great, but if people misinterpret what you're asking, or they're interpreting it in a way that you didn't mean, or they say something really awesome, you just can't follow up. And so talking to people in various ways, we've run a couple of different UX research studies. It's been great trying to get people to talk to users.
Cool.
We have a growing product design team, which is really exciting to see fresh faces coming in and bringing in more and more people to equip us to build many of the exciting things we're looking for and looking forward to. I think, as I said earlier, as UX research, as user research gets more professionalized in the startup space, and we get more familiar with the idea that this is a thing, my fear is product managers sort of letting go of that we get a little too focused on the business numbers and the business value. Nothing beats 2 hours spent with your customer, with your user, in their environment, watching them work, interact with your product, or more importantly, watching them do the thing before and the thing after your product. That's going to be the greatest source of filtering, of value understanding, of empathy that you can get. And the more of your teammates you can bring in to have those experiences, the better. Customers in to interview is wonderful. Right, it's a maximum exposure, lots of focused face time. You can present concepts, prototypes, play, sketch, draw, give them index cards to sketch new mobile interfaces and quickly iterate. That's awesome, but that face time, that really experiencing your product through someone else's eyes and with someone else's hands and them driving is you can't beat that. You really can't.
Yeah, I can add to that really quickly, because you mentioned about having frank conversations rather than these structured customer interviews and feedback processes. I think that is really helpful. For example, since we have real life processes that happen in a branch today, right? our product teams have started going into the branches and understanding the current processes that take place. Some of them are with technology, some of them are without technology. So I think that those kinds of interactions and observations are really important to take back to our teams and say, okay, this is what is expected behavior that happens in the branch, but we have seen something else as well. We have seen other workarounds which nobody else in the stakeholder group has highlighted as of today. So we try to, we get those different insights when we just start observing people in their own habitat. In our case, it's a branch network or the bank branches. So that is another way where we get amazing feedback from our customers and end users.
Great. Okay, one last maybe semi-rapid fire question before we go to Q&A. So let's say there's PMs here who are dealing with the hell of feedback. What's kind of the number one thing they can start doing immediately, or you would recommend they start doing immediately to get them out of that place?
Set fire to ancient feedback. It's worthless to you. It is an albatross that will drown you if you don't drown those puppies first. There's a few mixed metaphors for you.
I actually find the feedback kind of a release. We get a lot of really funny stuff that comes in. So we've started a bit of a, best of. I think sometimes that can really help, where you get to see, what people are really thinking of your product, and sometimes the way people write it is pretty awesome.
Swapna?
Create, feedback is amazing, and obviously you tie the feedback with your analytics or data, the hard data that you have, but also try to be fast, really quick. I've realized it in my current company. I think it helps to quickly do something and then, fail and then go on to something better or pivot in a way, which is how traditional agile product management works. But usually in bigger corporations, you don't have the bandwidth or the capacity or the agency to do that, right? So yeah, feedback is great. If you have amazing tons of feedback, try to use it, but at the same time, don't go in this analysis paralysis process. Just start doing something. Either create a very small prototype in a day or so, see if it works or no. If it doesn't, no problem, just do something else. But yeah, start somewhere very quickly.